Okay, so comic reviews. For the first four, technically, it's gonna be. I usually go in order by publisher, but this one is an acceptance as floppies, and also I did talk about this briefly uh, on my Instagram, and I'll talk about it even more briefly here. Now, this is the Marvel and DC crossover. I got this a while ago, but finally got around to reading it, and I liked it. I don't like. I was surprised to find out that this isn't well regarded. Like Comic Pop said, this is terrible. I didn't think it was all that bad. I think it gave me just what I wanted. It was a crossover between the Marvel and DC characters. First time I ever saw this, so I ever saw something like this. I think there's a bit of bias, but it's not like I'm a 10-year-old kid. I'm 23, so obviously it's not gonna like hinder my anything. It's not gonna hinder my bias because but it is the first time I've seen something like this just in general, so it is kind of interesting to read. It was interesting to read. I think it was still good. I still liked it. Would I read it again? Probably not. That is the one thing I'll give it. There wasn't a whole lot of like rereadability factor to it. And I guess you could argue it's a bit forgettable, but I still liked it. Five Nights at Freddy's. This is one of two of the new books or new items that I didn't say I was gonna read. That doesn't count. But Five Nights at Freddy's, I did like this one. I'm not a huge fan of video games. I actually kind of hate the video games that are coming out. I kind of consider them to be cringe. But I have changed a bit about it. I still probably will never play video games. And this movie, one minor downside I'll give to it right away is that it didn't get me to want to play the video games. I might play the ones that you're actually doing something and not just doing you going through the security cameras. That's kind of boring. I feel like it's kind of a boring mechanic to the game. But there is one I saw that you're like moving around and you're trying to hide from them or whatever. That is what I want from that kind of game. But the movie itself, I thought was enjoyable enough. I didn't think it was terrible, but I didn't think it was super great either, and I don't think that was meant to be super great. It was just a passable time. I'm glad I saw it, and I'm glad I rented it. It's worthy of a rental at the very least. My cousin loved it though. My cousin thought it was a really good movie, which is good. I think it did, even though I can't speak for like fans of the series, but he said he agreed to me. Well, he agreed to me. He agreed with me with a statement that did fan service a hell of a lot better than Mario did, the Mario movie, which I did not like. Hate You Give and Blind Spotting, it's two other movies that because I went to the library with him and I wanted to finish the movie first of all. That's the whole reason why he was picking me up, because we're going to his house to watch Five Nights at Freddy's. Then I got two other movies and a book I finished already, and thought I'll be reviewing. So Hate You Give and Blind Spotting have similar plot lines in police corruption. Something happens to the police and they want to revolt against the police, kind of thing like that. This one is more of that, but this one is more explaining why the character can't do that. And I think it's a very well written way of explaining that. And both are good movies. Both I do recommend. I actually kind of recommend you read them. You read them. I kind of recommend you watch them back to back, like I did. I watched this one the first day and then this one the second day. And which one's a better one? Honestly, I think each one does what it's set out to do the best. So I can't really pick a best one. I think this one does like all the kind of arguments we'll have about why you should and shouldn't do these things. I think it does do that in a very well written way. And then this one this one is more comedic too, because it doesn't do the same things that this one does. There's no like scene out in like the streets where they're like revolting against the police and there's a whole like shootout kind of thing. No, this one just is there is a confrontation, but it's at the very end, and it's kind of like not underwhelming, but it's not as like big as this one is. I do appreciate that it did that for this one. I do think that this one, it only works in this movie because of what it was, what it meant to this person. But here, it was just a random person that gets shot. Here, it's her friend. It's not a big spoiler. It's in the trailers too. Like, it's also part of the story, the plot too. So it's not a spoiler. And no, it's not like one of those movies where you spoil the plot. You spoil the movie by giving out the plot. No. But I think both are very, very good, and I'm glad I rewatched them, because I have watched these before. It's the second time seeing both. Scott Pilgrim Volume 3. I still think this is a... this is still very, very good. I am like with this and Walking Dead, I am so eager to read the next volume in the series, and that's like the number one thing I'm going for when I go to the library. Of course, the other books I got, but both both rereads too, which is funny. But like this, with this and Walking Dead, it's just been so long, so I might as well be reading for the first time. In fact, someone spoiled something in the books. I was like, I don't even remember that. I remember some kind of thing that happened like that, but I don't remember exactly what happened. Like with Walking Dead. And both are like 10 out of 10s, honestly. Like, highly recommends. Heart in the Box, I thought was good enough. It was short enough. I think if it was any longer, I would have kind of hated it. It's a good story, but it kind of does remind me of that kind of like first draft kind of thing. The first draft is good enough. They could have probably put it in the oven for a little bit longer or did a rewrite, but I don't think it didn't like really make the book any worse or better. It would have made it better. And you could argue it made it worse, but I think this was a good enough storyline. I would like to see this adapted into like a TV show or a movie, so it does have that going for it. It's not terrible, it's just kind of like somewhat forgettable. Like, I remember what the story was about, but you could argue it's kind of forgettable. There's something that happens near the end that I really liked. I think they did more of that than I would really like the movie. The book. I did like it. I still give like a 7 out of 10, but I don't think it was. And honestly, I don't think anybody considers this to be like great. The artwork though is Bandai. It's done by Meredith McLaren, and if you recognize his artwork, it's actually the same creative team as the Black Cloak, Clay Thompson and Meredith McLaren. Her artwork gives me it's a lot for me to get used to. Now it is very similar to Andrew McClellan's artwork. As Clellan, not Claren. So, like, there's something like certain like eyes, like the way that they draw their eyes, is very similar to the way that Andrew McClellan draws his eyes. But honestly, I'm pulling through it. I'm trying to see where I can give you an example. But it's like that kind of like it is cartoony too. Like I don't completely mind cartoony artwork. Like right here, it's a good. Let's get rid of it. Like right here is a good example. It's that kind of maybe it's just the way that they draw it in general, like the art style they're using. So obviously it's gonna look familiar, like how every painted artwork reminds you of Alex Ross, or pretty much every painted artwork reminds you of Alex Ross. But I did think this was okay. It's not one that I would like. It's not one I'm gonna come back to anytime soon, but I might. It's kind of a hard one to review, honestly. Rewild, I was pretty disappointed with. It wasn't as, like... So, the last one this happened with is another Dark Horse book called House of Penance. The first time I read House of Penance, I didn't like it at all. Second time I read it, I liked it a lot better. But the first time I read it, I was under the impression there was a much better story than it actually was. There was so much praise. So many of my favorite authors, like Brian Azzarello, and I believe Garth Ennis, and, like, all those regulars. And he had some regulars like Scott Snyder who gives praise to like every book, every modern comic nowadays. It seems to be for every modern creator-owned book he gives praise to. So sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. But of course it's his opinion. But it seems to be every single book you see he gives. I'm still excited to see it regardless, though. It still makes my purchase that more that much better for me. I say like that. But this one was one that a lot of people gave praise to. Brian K. Vaughan gave praise. Mark Buckingham. Mark Waid. And short on them are like... I would say the one I like the best is definitely definitely Brian K. Vaughan. Even Mark Waid... Yeah, I would say Mark Waid is a close second. Mark Buckingham, he's done Fables. I wasn't the hugest fan of Fables. Which is kind of funny to think about because I should be. I like fantasy. I think I need to give it one more shot, but I think it was because there's so many characters in that book, and we follow the ones that I wanted to follow, not often enough. But anyways, this one was good enough, but I kind of don't remember what happened in the book, and flipping through it, I can kind of, I remember more and more flipping through it, now I remember. And it was a good enough story. but it was like this is what you're giving so much praise to, and it's just kind of okay, and it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. It's supposed to be one of those endings that makes you think, but and I will give it I will give it credit where credit is due. It wasn't obnoxious with that part, with that doing that. With doing that, it wasn't that obnoxious as obnoxious as it could have been, but it wasn't spectacular. I think it was a bit of a letdown. But I was like, part of me was expecting that it was not gonna live up to the expectations of the writers that gave it praise. The other writers gave it praise. Then we have Omni, all written by Devin Grace, and this is awful. This was one of the 3 or 4 books I absolutely hated reading. Now, this, unlike Rewild, wasn't an OGN. Rewild is an OGN. You read that all in one sitting. This one was 4 issues, and even reading the 4 issues felt like I was reading 4 OGNs. It was just so boring and bland and nothing that I give a shit about. And it's one of the few times I'm glad I didn't have the next volume of this series at my or on Interloans. I believe they just had volume 1. Had it been my first Devin Grayson book, I would have avoided Devin Grayson like the plague. But thankfully, the first Devin Grayson book I can think of that I read was her Black Widow run, which is incredible. Like, really damn good. 6 if you count the second series, but 3 issue miniseries. It's 2 series out of 3 issue miniseries. But they are one's a follow up, so you could argue it's a 6 issues miniseries in general. But it's split up into 3 issues. And one of them is co-written by Greg Rucka. Livewire by Vita Ayala, Volume 2. Like a Volume 1, I think this is pretty good. I forgot that I was supposed to read Volume 3. Whoopsies. Because elsewhere. But because part of the reason why I picked this up was to finally finish it. You know, like I did with Welcome Back by Chris Zabala. I wanted to finally finish this one once and for all. But I still think it's a good enough book. It's not anything I'd buy myself, I don't think. Even if I somehow got into volume, which I don't think I ever will. But it's passable enough. Like, I thought it was interesting enough. It kept my interest in. That was about. And it gave me interest, but it kind of. I don't really have any downsides to it other than it didn't really. Like, it wasn't like a super. You know, kind of like one of those books where it's just kind of like it's good enough, but it's a bit better than good enough. And honestly, it's probably the best book I've read by Vita Ayala. So it's got that going for it. Blink by Christopher Zabala. I'm glad I read this again because I liked it a lot more than I did the first time. I actually was intrigued. Because I didn't really remember what happened at the end of this book, like Walking Dead, which is not good because I did not read this. Because this one, like Walking Dead, I read like 3 years ago. This, I haven't even read a year. Even a year hasn't passed. Well, technically it did. But it was like, I want to say August, I think it was. Actually, it was. It was either June or August. No, it was August. It was August, I remember now. August or even September. And it was a lot of things I didn't remember about this book. And even now, there's not a whole lot I remember about this book. But I do think it was a surprisingly good book that I was surprised I didn't like the first time. Jonesy, one of the other books that was absolutely terrible. Now, I'm going to review this along with Lumberjanes, because both are Boombox Kids books. Where one book does their comedy really well, the other does a comedy absolutely terribly. This is the book I was expecting Lumberjanes to be. That's why I was dreading reading Lumberjanes, even though it was written by an author I kind of liked. But it was still kind of like that, it's going to be that kind of humor, isn't it? And I was dreading because I thought that would be like this. Now, and then there's another thing that these characters, even when they act, they say the lines, or they do this thing, or make a mistake, you still sympathize with them. With Jonesy, you don't. Like, Jonesy is a terribly written character, and just a terrible character in general. It's really selfish and annoying. And honestly, it's one of those books that reading it almost gave me a headache. And it's like, and not because it was small text and I was straining my eyes. No, because I could hear the characters' voices, and it was absolutely straining. All the worst kinds of humor. This is basically just as bad as Squirrel Girl, if not worse. No, it was just as bad. Almost as bad, I would say. Squirrel Girl is still like the magnum opus of terrible. This would probably be the second worst, maybe third. But this is absolutely spectacular. This is how you do that kind of humor. This is how you write these kinds of books. Should be like people that want to write something similar to this, like similar feel, but not similar plot, obviously, or even similar plot, but not obviously not copycatting, or not copy, not copywriting, basically plagiarizing. I was looking for. That's obviously not plagiarism. They should go to a class, and the writers and artists of Bliss Books should be teaching that class. This is how you write that kind of book. But really nice surprise reading Lumberjanes. Archie Volume 4, so damn good. And there was something that I forgot that happened towards the end of this book. I remember when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And it was like, just like Walking Dead and Scott Pilgrim, it was very, very intriguing, kept my interest throughout, and this is probably the best Archie book I've ever read. I think I like it better than Afterlife with Archie, because this one does also have a definitive ending. But this is like, it's surprising that an Archie book is like one of my favorite books of all time. Not of all time, but it's one of my favorite reads of this past year, and the year that I read it. Because again, it's a reread. Secret Adventures Volume 2 is still so damn good. This is like a surprising, it's a huge surprise. Ailscott, he also wrote, I almost said read again, he wrote Generation Gone, which I thought was really boring. And the first time I read this, I thought it was kind of just uninteresting too, but the second time I read it, I liked it a lot more. And for the third time, like, this might become my every 6 months I go back to it book, because this is so damn good, and I highly recommend checking this one out. You can start with Volume 1 too, like you can start with this run of Secret Adventures, even though it's the second volume technically of Secret Adventures. Maybe even third. Avengers Arena, I wasn't expecting a whole lot going into this. The plotline intrigued me a lot, but it didn't seem to get the best reviews, but it's proof that Dennis Hopeless is an underrated writer that needs a lot more love from the comic book community. He writes, it's not like something like his X-Men run, the all-new X-Men follow-up to Bendis' run. It isn't breaking the mold exactly, but he writes interesting stories. He knows that he's not going to break the mold, so he puts all his effort into making it interesting throughout. Which I think I keep saying that, but it's true about these books, And one thing I will give this is the book actually had stakes too. There's something that happens towards the beginning of this book that sets a tone for the rest of the series, and that I think is a very good thing to do. It's a very good thing to do. It was a very smart decision on Dennis' side. And yeah, it could just end up like they get again kind of like a retcon ending without giving too much away. But I don't think they would do that, but I could see it happening. And they wouldn't ruin my overall enjoyment of the series either. And I really hope this has 12 issues, because that's all I have is the first 12 issues or first 2 volumes. Because I'm sure it's a volume 3. Patsy Walker Hellcat is the second worst book I've ever read, right behind Squirrel Girl. It has the same cringe humor, same annoying characters, same annoying everything, same terrible artwork that Squirrel Girl did. But it's not as bad as Squirrel Girl, because it was this one that at least had some interesting elements throughout. At least had some moments where I wasn't totally bored out of my skull. But this is one of those books that when I finished it, I felt like I needed a medal. Like I need a medal or a badge, or hell, maybe even a trophy. But behind there, I should have added a trophy that I finally read Patsy Walker to that trophy thing you see behind me. I actually, if I really wanted to go through with the joke, I would actually, because you can buy trophies. I would buy a trophy that said actually read through the first volume of Hellcat and Squirrel Girl. And it's more than this. There's 3 volumes in this series. I'm not continuing with this. I'm not even doing my rule of it's only like a limited series, so just read them all. Even if it was 2, because I say it would, like if it's 2-volume series, I'll stick through it and finish it. Like, take that into consideration when you remember all the other books I absolutely hated that I stomached through. all 3 volumes of. This is absolutely terrible. It's not one I ever come back to either and like a lot more. No, this is just cringe and annoying. I think we are done with all the ones that I absolutely hated. I think the rest of them were at least passable to really good. Captain Marvel, I still like the series. I still think this run is a very good run. I still think it's a good example of how Kelly Sue DeConnick is actually a pretty good writer most of the time. I don't think I've read anything by her that I absolutely hated. There's actually there's another series I read for the first time that I thought I would like. I really enjoyed it. So I do, and she's teamed up with Chris Rosabella too, which is kind of funny. And very good pretty damn interesting series. I think they stuck with this kind of writing style for Captain Marvel. I didn't try to make her super overpowered. I don't think the hate will be justified, but it is because they give damn good examples of why Captain Marvel is an annoyingly written character that's overpowered, and yeah, there's a good reason for it. But so far, there's no, like, she does lose more than she wins sometimes, and there are like certain elements in this book that make her a better written character. But I heard it only goes downhill from here, so holding out hope it gets better. And I accidentally, so I thought the 3rd volume of this series was just the Captain Marvel, the reboot. It's not. It's the Avengers Enemy Within, and even that doesn't have all the series. They have a crossover with Infinity, but train of thought just went out the window. But I thought that 3rd volume was stupid to think of, because that was why I thought that, because there's 3 volumes in the next series. I knew it was 3 volumes. The reboot series. I know it's very, very confusing. That's comics for you. But it's a reboot series that's 3 volumes. Why didn't I think that would be that Enemy Within would be after this one? Maybe I did and just forgot to remind myself. I guess I don't know. As dumb as that sounds. West Coast Avengers was a nice surprise. I was expecting it to be absolutely terrible, like Patsy Walker, and I was actually very interested with this book. And it made an annoying character that I heard was super annoying, like Gwenpool, actually very interesting. And I heard it for her first series, which is actually the first issue of this, is collected in here. I heard that series is actually pretty good. I might actually, next time I go to the library, not this time, but next time, I will definitely check out her first series. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of like, that's how you get that kind of humor. That's how you write a new Deadpool character, even if it is kind of redundant with Deadpool. But there is one major difference that kind of makes sense as to why she breaks the 4th wall. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty. I'll give Christopher Hastings that. That's a very interesting little twist there. And it did have a 2nd volume, and second and final volume of that series, which was nice. America by Gabby Rivera. Somehow this is better than Squirrel Girl and Patsy Walker. This is actually fun bad. It is just so fun to go back to the series and just, like, see what the fuss is all about, see how bad comics can get, and still be kind of interesting. Now, I think Home is still better written than this, but Home is a good example of a comparison to give to this book. Home is an absolutely, like, propaganda, but it's interesting propaganda. It's the story behind it. If you just, again, like I said before, with Home, if it's supposed to be a satire of how people think the world is supposed to be, like, if it was basically like South Park, then it would make sense. Like, if Home was written by the South Park guys, it would be praised, because it would be obviously a satire, and it's supposed to be over the top. They know it's over the top. But Home is over the top and supposed to be, like, say, like, this is how the world will be if, yada, yada, yada. And no, it's not. It's not how it is or how it ever will be. And the reason why I know that is because everyone else is saying it's not. So, no. But America is just, so many things wrong with comics are in this book, but it's still so interesting. It's a dumpster fire, it's a crash, it's a car crash, it's like a car crash. You drive by a car crash and you can't help but look at the car crash. This is the ultimate car crash. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur is how you do new characters right. This and Ms. Marvel I do really like, which ironically, she does make an appearance in here. But I think this is better than Ms. Marvel, because the character, well, she's kind of annoying. I think that's kind of the point of a character. Like you're supposed to root for her, yes, but you're supposed to be annoyed when she's annoying. It's supposed to be like, well, she's gonna change in the next few issues probably, or the next few volumes probably. But it's not as she's not as annoying as I remember her being the first time I read this series. Again, reread. But I still think this is a very good series, and I think it's a fantastic book for kids to read too. Especially if they liked watching that the cartoon that came out recently. I keep forgetting that came out. I guess I completely forgot that came out until I was reading Moon Girl again. I was like, that's right, they had a cartoon. Like honestly, you could tell me it hasn't released yet, and I would believe you. That's how much I don't. That's how much I don't know about the cartoon. But I know it's released because I saw a review of it. Nighthawk. So if I didn't see the review, then I would believe you. Nighthawk. Reread that I am so glad. Like with. Who's the one I said that with? I just reviewed it too. But like the other book, I'm glad I went back to read. Oh, Blink. So like with Blink, I am so glad I decided to read Nighthawk again, because this was really damn good. And I'm surprised, again, it's one of those books, one of many, many rereads, I'm like, I hated this the first time I read it. I guess I was just expecting Bitterroot. I should not have expected Bitterroot, even though it's written by the same guy. And maybe he teamed up with Chuck Brown, maybe then it would make more sense, but I should not have expected Bitterroot. But I still think it's a very good series. I still think it handled the political sides of the political side of the story. It handled it very well, and it's very interesting. And I know I keep saying that about these books, but it's true. It's very intriguing, very investing, and keeps your interest. I think it's a worthy. I think it's one of those. It's only one volume too, so you can't go wrong. It's worth the $17.99 cover price, and even more so if you get a discount or for free, a library like I did. But either way, it's worthy of watching, reading. This has been such a damn good series. It only seems to get better and better. Spider-Man and Deadpool is probably my second favorite Deadpool run, honestly. Not my second favorite Spider-Man run, but my second favorite Deadpool run, right behind Jerry Duggan's run. Probably third, so I would say Daniel Ways is a bit better, but I haven't finished Daniel Ways, and actually I haven't finished this yet either, so. But it's still, so far, it's my second favorite Deadpool run. And I'm almost done with the series, too. And you got 2 more volumes. It makes sense. We're already at issue 40 out of 50, so 2 more volumes. The Amazing Spider-Man Clone Saga is yet another one of those books that I'm glad that this is the last one they had. Because we're finally getting to why, I finally understand why people hated the Clone Saga so much. And it's so overstuffed. And yeah, there's something that happens at the end of this book that's continued into the 4th volume, so it's like, ah, damn, now I really want to read the 4th volume, kind of, sort of, but not really. Doctor Strange by Jason Aaron, still feel the same way. Still think it's a damn good run. Every time I reread it, I like more and more about this run. I find more and more to like about this run, which I think is absolutely like that. Goes to show that you are a damn good writer when someone can reread your work and find more and more to appreciate each time they come back to it. Serious House on Serious Earth is one of the most messed up, crazy Batman stories that it's a must read. If you have not read this yet, read it right now. Batman Deathblow is proof that Brian Azzarello is an underrated writer and a damn good writer. And so far, I've not read a single thing by Brian Azzarello I've not liked. The only thing I can think of... What did he write? And he co-wrote it with someone else I didn't really like that, but I can't think of anything. Batman and Night of the Monster Men is only worth reading if you're like me and you were like, oh shit, we're on issue 8 already. Oh, there's a crossover here. Okay, I gotta read this as a complete list. Other than that, there's no real reason to come back to this book, or there's no real reason to read this book. Only if you want to get the full experience of Tom King's Batman. I think actually the button is after this volume. Maybe the 3rd volume, which I kind of hope, but we'll see. But this run is still, so this run in general, I still liked, but there's something that happens in this volume that was like, okay, now I understand why people hate Tom King's Batman. Because it's one of those things that, yeah, it did really annoy me, but it didn't ruin the overall run for me, or the overall story for me. I still think this is Tom King, not at his best, but at his, like, this is still interesting enough. And yeah, ironically enough, and I'll get to it when I get to it, but there's a series that I read that had Catwoman in it, and it was a very differently written Catwoman, and it was so jarring for me to read that and then read this that it was like, okay, so there's that too. Like that's another reason why people hate this run, is because Catwoman is not like the Catwoman that we know and love from Gotham City Sirens, is a series I'll be talking about pretty soon here. But in that, you'll see when I'll get more in depth when I get to Gotham City Sirens. But yeah, it was very jarring. But other than that, it was an interesting enough story, but it did have a lot of Tom King isms. I didn't really like those isms, but I'm used to it now, so it's kind of just kind of numb to it now, if anything. Gotham City Garage is passable, but it's probably the best DC digital firsts that I've read. Now, I'm talking not the most recent, like the pandemic ones, I'll call it that, the pandemic run that came out during the pandemic. No, I'm talking the ones that came out in 2015. We had DC Comics Bombshells, which is absolutely annoying and terrible. Then we had this, which I think is at least interesting enough. It's not spectacular or anything like that. I would say if you want to read this, you can get it at a discount. But other than that, I think it's good enough. You know, it keeps my interest throughout, and I will always give a book a pass with that. And this is the book that kept my interest throughout. But it wasn't anything spectacular. If they didn't have the next volume of this series at the library, I wouldn't cry over it, you know? It's like, alright, whatever. I probably forget about it in, like, within the next book that I was reading. Like, oh yeah, I go and say Garage, yeah. Anyways, you know, that kind of thing. Wonder Woman Meredith Finch's run is a worthy follow-up to Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman. Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman is my favorite run, but this... Oh, crap. I'm going to end it for now. I'm looking up, my library just called me. So Wonder Woman is a worthy enough follow-up to Brian Azzarello's run. Azzarello's run is my favorite Wonder Woman, but this is very, very close. Like, as close as you can get to competing with Azzarello's run. And all they're calling about is they're going to say, yeah, you have a lot of books checked out. Yeah, I'm going in today to return the books. All good. Martian Manhunter was a surprise. I was expecting this to be absolutely boring, and I was like, I'm just bringing this up because it's Rob Williams. Maybe it's not the best book to pick up for my first Rob Williams book. That's not, well, actually the first one I read was Sword of Hybrid Warrior, which I still think is very good. But I was kind of skeptical to read this book. I was like, ah, shit, you know, should I have picked this book? But I was pleasantly surprised. Now we're on to Gotham City Sirens, which I think is probably my favorite of all of these, probably. This was... I had really high expectations coming to this book, and somehow they were met. Each expectation was met. And yes, Catwoman in here is written a lot differently than I remember her being in... Well, than she is in Rebirth. And it was very jarring because it's like, oh yeah, this is the Catwoman people like, not the weird Catwoman in Tom King's Batman, a hero for Catwoman. As Catwoman. Crazy. But this is, like, it's worth every penny. Like, honestly, $24.99 is a damn good price for this book in general. Definitely get this book. The omnibus is coming out, and it's worth buying the omnibus if you can't find the trades. I wouldn't be surprised, though. Harley Quinn by Carl Kessel, I somehow liked even better the second time. I really liked the book the first time I read this book. The first time I read this book, I really liked it, but I like it even more a second time. It gets better even each reread. Like I said before, if you can manage to do that, that means you're a damn good writer. Multiversity, like, this is kind of the inverse of Harley Quinn by Carl Kessel, which each time I read this book, I kind of find more and more to not like with this book. I still think it's really good, but it's kind of getting old to come back to this book and reread it. I think a lot of that has to do with how long each issue is. I think this should have been double the amount of issues and then half the amount of pages. It's double issues. I don't think they need to do that. I think there's a lot of pacing issues too. Hell, if anything, you could cut some pages. But I still think it was good. I still do recommend checking it out. There's some issues like a Thunder World I want to see more of. I want to see a Grant Morrison Shazam run, and I want to see Grant Morrison's take on Watchmen, which is in here too. So it has that going for it. It has some very damn interesting storylines, and it's almost all one shots. But I think the overall narrative is interesting, and the Just does it the best way, which is that's kind of like the whole it's a kind of penultimate issue anyways, and it actually is the penultimate issue. It's one of the most important issues of the run in general, so it's good that he went all out with the Ultra, I think it was called. No, not the Ultra. I think actually it was the Ultra. The Just, sorry, the Just. Or was the Ultra? Now I can't remember. I think the guy was called the Ultra. Let's see, what was it called? Ultra Comics. I was right. Ultra Comics. That was the best one. No, the Just. I swear to God, it was called the Just. No, Ultra Comics. I was right. Sorry. Yep, the Ultra Comics. That was what it was all leading up to, except for obviously the last issue. And again, penultimate means second to last. And I do think that it was worthy. It's what it was all leading up to, except for the. I'm trying to. I can't talk. Apparently, I'm just trying to say it in a way, but I can't say it. I'm trying to say it was good. That was one of the highlights of the book. There you go. Moving on. Wonder Woman Historia. This is the Kelly City comic book I was alluding to. That I read for the first time. Was not expecting a whole lot, but was pleasantly surprised. And honestly, because of this and her Captain Marvel run so far, I wouldn't argue with anybody because she kind of is one of the main bullies of comics nowadays, from what I've heard and from what I've witnessed. So I would say, hey, she's not bad of a writer. Read this and Captain Marvel run, which is two terrible examples to give, I know, but I just thought it was just really interesting, and the artwork was really damn good. It's one of those books that when Numa Condition was giving it praise, I was like, yeah, well, you also get this book praise that I absolutely hated, and this book praise that no one else liked, and you like somehow. But this is one that, it's proof that I should probably be listening more to Numa Condition than anybody, because I do forget that a lot of the books that I have now, I have because of him. And he really liked it, and I really like it. Honestly, an example is Gotham City Sirens, and he was one of the many people that looked back fondly on that book, and when they were going over the solicitations for the omnibus, he was like, "Oh, you think this stuff?" And I was like, "All right," and I was pleasantly surprised. The artwork is spectacular, absolutely phenomenal here. The story is kind of all over the place. I think as it goes along, it's more and more focused, which I really appreciate. The first is 3 issues. The first issue, they're longer, actually, as you can tell, they're longer issues. But the first issue was kind of the most all over the place issue out of them all. But as we went along, it got more and more focused, and it actually got really interesting too. And I honestly want to see more of this too. Yeah, I know it's a prequel, and the prequel is all done, but I would like to see kind of like a follow-up if they could. Or just have Kelly Sue DeConnick on Wonder Woman. But they probably won't do that. She doesn't seem to have a lot of writing credits recently. Walking Dead, it was, again, like I said, it's just so damn interesting. It's like I'm reading it for the first time, a lot that I forgot about it, and it's proof why I go back to reading, why going back to rereading series that you already finished is a damn good idea. At least for me. And then, last but not least, is Slash Them All. One that I felt was good enough, but the more and more I think about it, the more and more mixed I am. It is kind of a quick one and done kind of book, and it kind of ends kind of quickly. I felt like there should have been at least 200 pages, and it was 176. I think that 24 more pages would have fleshed out a little bit more. I felt like it was a bit too fast paced, but I still thought it was good. It was the last book I read, and it was kind of late at night. It was almost midnight. and I was glad that it only took me an hour to read this book. So, in that regard, I liked it, but I still think that it's only. No, I would still say it's worth picking out no matter what. I would still say, form your own opinion. But I think it was pretty damn good. Pretty damn interesting. And that, as I say, is that. 40 minutes. See you in the next one.